Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am joined by an awesome entrepreneur today. I will tell you, before we even hit record today, I can tell how much incredible energy and passion she has for not only what she does, but for entrepreneurship and really for just showing up from a place of service. And I will say that if you've listened to this podcast and you've heard so many amazing software entrepreneurs and executives and CEOs, and you've always thought, how do I start a software business? Or even if you're not interested in software, but you just don't know how to go from idea to execution, then today's entrepreneur is really going to open our eyes. Let me tell you all about her. Her name is Sannette Coetzee. She is a transformative leader with over 23 years of experience revolutionizing global agility. The agility framework is something that Sannette is going to give us some insights into for all of us. We'll have a lot of eye-opening takeaways from hearing her talk about that. From her pivotal role at Visa to her groundbreaking initiatives at PayPal, Sannette's expertise spans agile coaching, product management, and community building. With a track record of designing bespoke frameworks and facilitating over 2,500 workshops, she's a master of driving organizational change. I'm so excited about this. We're all going to learn a lot today. Whether you're interested in software or not, this is going to push the envelope to action. And that's what it's all about. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Sannette Coetzee. All right, Sannette, I am so excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Brian. Hello.
There's so much good stuff we're going to get into today. You have so much experience, and I love the fact that you don't lose any energy or enthusiasm in all that experience. So, Sannette, first things first, take us beyond the bio. Who is Sannette? How did you start doing all these incredible things that you're up to?
If we go back all the way to the beginning, so I'm from South Africa. I grew up on a small farm community. We had 100 pupils in primary schools in South Africa. We don't have middle schools. From there, I got into a software job. Actually, I went to university for engineering first and work out. I got a software position. I was actually putting motherboards together when PCI slots just came out. I got let go from that job. And then I took that money and I moved to the UK because, why wouldn't you want to go and explore the world? And I went back to university actually when I was 27. So shout out to all the older folks that goes back and do extra learning. I worked 3 jobs, got through it. And once I got that piece of paper, the world changed. I started doing a web developer job in London. And then somebody had the idea of needed a project manager. And that is how I got into the work that I do now, because it was the first time that I came into this knowledge where I realized that I really like holding spaces for other people to connect, specifically in technology, because I love the idea of ecosystems and how all of this work together. And from there, I just went upward and onward, and I have this drive to always keep traveling. My mom calls it ants in the pants. I got a job in Chicago. I flew back and forth. I basically went for a long interview for like 9 months. So I flew back and forth every 2 weeks between London and the US, and I delivered this project successfully. I finally got the visa, and I worked at companies like PayPal and Visa, and I always wanted to have my own company. I wanted to try new and different things. And it's once I got my citizenship in the US that I was actually able to step into that. And now I'm developing virtual reality applications, which is meant for software teams to create more of that connection and that collaboration space. But I'll go back to you, Brian. I don't know if that intro was too long.
No, Sannette, it was amazing for so many reasons, especially because I think it shows what is your secret sauce, which is you really have operated in so many different worlds. You think a little bit like a developer. You obviously have been inside the tech world. You've worked at some of the biggest brands that we all recognize, the Visas of the world, the PayPals of the world, super innovative companies that have also been at it for a while, for example, in the case of Visa. So I think you've navigated all of those waters, which gives you such that unique perspective. Sannette, combining all all of that, what is it? I know that the Agile framework is so at the core of not only the way that you operate, but I would imagine that it also shapes the way that you see the world, the way that you see business. Talk to us about Agile, because fun fact, in almost 900 episodes, we've only ever once before talked about the Agile framework. So for Sannette, so for listeners who are tuning in, what the heck is so special about Agile? What is it, and how does it shape the way you see the world?
Great question, Brian. So actually, fun fact, 86% of all the companies in the world that do software development use this methodology. And that's what Agile is. Agile is a framework that described a specific set of values and principles, which you then turn into practices, which becomes an operating model. Operating model is what are the roles that's involved in how you deliver your products? What are the artifacts involved? And what are the activities, the events? Like, how do people connect? It's basically creating a playbook for how we move work throughout our ecosystem to eventually deliver something to the customer. And Agile, the big difference from it used to be called waterfall methodology. And waterfall used to be, we were dead set on we're going to be extremely accurate when we, at the beginning of a project, spent months and months defining requirements, and we estimate to our best ability, and then we go and we design it, and then we test it, and then eventually we put it in front of the customer. Now, a few issues with that was we were always running behind. We're just not that good in taking something and decomposing it and estimating it accurately. What works actually better, and this is where Agile came in, Agile said, why don't we build something small, put it in front of the customer fast, get some feedback, and then we relatively size that small piece to the next piece we want to build. And now we have a historical data point that we can use to forecast from. So going from waterfall to Agile also introduced the ideas of not negotiating contracts, which was it has to be to the letter exactly these list of things, but to a negotiation where we, for example, would say, if the customer's ultimate objective is to go from A to B, we can negotiate. They didn't tell us how they want to get there. It can be a Ferrari, it can be a motorcycle, it can be a jet ski, whatever the parameters are. But now we can actually negotiate the outcome versus the output. And Agile puts a lot of focus on people. And that's what I really loved about this. I tried to be the project manager that would dole out the tasks, and it felt so uncomfortable. I really didn't like it, and it created a little bit of friction between myself and the team. And then Agile came and it gave me a way to be a servant leader. We create an environment that allows other people to shine and they connect. And the reason why I have my company and why I step out is because I really want to bring the joy back to collaboration and connection.
Yeah, Sannette, there's so much to unpack in there. I think that we're not used to when we talk about this tech world, when we talk about, you've already mentioned developing VR apps. And I will say, as an early Apple Vision Pro tech adopter, I've got many questions for you today, Sannette. So along those lines, though, when we talk about that world, we don't often bring in people into the equation. And it's so fascinating to me that just in that answer there, that's at the core of so much of the way that not only you operate, but of course, that the Agile framework operates. And I'd love to go a little bit deeper there, because when we're talking about people, we always have people problems, and there's a million opinions, there's a million different ways of doing things. I think about so often in the tech startup world, we've had amazing entrepreneurs on from that world where they talk about sometimes there can be a culture of ready, fire, aim, and a lot of that is an afterthought. Whereas even hearing you talk about the predecessor to Agile, talking about the waterfall framework, it just seems like a really intentional way of going about it. Sannette, how the heck do we navigate the people element of all this to get everybody on the same page? I think that's something that all of us struggle with in all of our businesses, regardless of industry.
I love this question. I'm extremely passionate about this, and it's actually one of the boot camps that I run is focused on the strategy and alignment, and 100%. I think I read somewhere somebody called it meeting tax and collaboration chaos, which is it's a perfect description of it, but it's actually quite sad for me that this is something that exists to that extent that we had to give it these names, because I see there's so much beauty in that connection. And I feel there's nothing more powerful when people come together and they're in their flow and they're authentic and we're actually building something together. I was thinking about vibing. I know these are older words, but that's when there's real magic, when we're vibing together in this space. Now, I love the use of value streams. Value stream there's different names. You call it customer value stream, operational value stream, but it's a construct. And I know the first time I heard that, I was like, what does that even mean? But really what it is a visual representation of how your customer, and remember, you start with your customer persona. So for me, alignment and cooperation and getting across barriers with people, first and foremost, come from creating a pool of meaning. And that pool of meaning, when you're delivering a customer or a product for a customer, should be the customer and their problems and how we're solving that. So if you're starting with a customer persona, which we all agree upon, so it's Susie, she's 35-year-old, she's a stay-at-home mom. What is her typical behaviors? And then there's a framework we also call jobs to be done. What is the jobs that she needs to do with the solution that we're going to be creating for her? You take that and then you create a value stream. And a value stream goes through the high-level steps that the user, the customer, will interact with as they're using your product. For example, say I have a magical flower shop, which is an online place where you can buy flowers. The high-level steps would be, the first thing is I need to be made aware of this. So there's going to be some work that needs to be done and some campaign that lets me know there's an online portal or some advertisements. The next step is I'm probably going to arrive there and I'm going to browse around a little bit, and I'm going to want to create a profile so I can save my preferences and make orders and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be some work on onboarding. Then I'm going to want to place an order. So there's got to be a place where I can search the flowers and put it in order. Then I'm going to want to pay, and then I'm going to need to receive this. So that high level steps in the value stream, very visual. So there's lots of electronic tools that does it very well. That's actually also why I built my virtual reality application, so that we have this very tangible 3D massive board that keeps reminding us of what is the flow that the customer needs to go through. If you have that there, and then you have conversations with your development partner, with your business, where you can even bring the customer in, and you start creating the work underneath of all of that. And here's the secret sauce that people miss about this. Instead of building out, which is what we love to do, especially if you're a developer, you want to make it, we call it gold plating. So you want to put in as much as possible in there to make it beautiful and perfect. But that's not what the customer need. They don't need a beautiful registration page that's going to contain everything. They just need to get to the point where they actually receive our flowers. So what you then do with your team is you look across this whole value stream, you identify just enough, we call them thin slices, just enough in each of those steps, so we can build it together, put it out, and put it in front of the customer and see what they think about it.
Yeah, gosh, Sannette, I love that answer, because listeners, I'm going to call every single one of us out, because what Sannette is sharing with us here today, this level of intentionality, this level of strategic forethought, this is something that not just within the scope of, we're talking about launching products and operationally executing, Sannette, but I think that this level of intentionality, we need to apply to our marketing campaigns, to our client onboarding campaigns. I think all of this needs to come with that. And I always think, Sannette, when I'm in this role as the podcast host, I always just try to think like a listener. And whether they're newer entrepreneurs, whether they're experienced entrepreneurs, what they might be hearing here is a lot of decisions that need to be made in advance. And they're sitting there in advance and saying, oh my gosh, what is that going to look like? I am planning for things that I may not necessarily even know of right now. What's your advice? Because I will publicly call you out here, because I think that one of your secret skill sets is helping people to make decisions fast. And in a world where so many people are paralyzed by decision or indecision, Sannette, talk to us about decision making. I want to hear your perspectives on that, because I know you have a lot of experience on it. Most importantly, I know you help a lot of other people with it.
Yes, thank you, Brian. It is a very, very good point. And I can tell you what I've seen that haven't worked. Big companies like Visa and PayPal, we love to have decision matrix model. So there's a weighting scoring model, which is really where you identify the factors that's important for you to make a decision about where you're going to put your focus. You give them each weight. Then you take your items that you need to decide and you drop it into your model. Now, not to overwhelm you, but the point is, people feel that that is going to make a decision for you. But what I've discovered is you're still going to have a conversation. So you will have to sit down and light highlight and lay out what it is, where your vision is, and where you are on your journey. So one of the things that I help to set a direction, sorry, just knock my mic over here, is we use a tool called OKRs. So prioritization is another way of talking about it, but OKRs is really goal setting. The O is an objective and the key R is a key result. And I love this framing of it because you take it from your mission. So say, for example, my mission is we enable teams or people to connect, collaborate, and make decisions fast. We do it through face-to-face conversations, workshops, and technology. That is my mission in this world, to bring that joy back to connecting people. And one of our products are a strategic alignment where we help them to make decisions. Those techniques that we use in there is we start with a mission, make sure everybody's aligned to that. Then we also align on our values. Like, what do we believe is true for us as a company? In Agile, for example, one of those values are that we truly believe a team is the true unit of progress, not individuals. So when we put performance, etc. in place, we always evaluate the team and we let the team decide and we let the team estimate, for example. So just align on your values. I would always do that when you have your leadership team. Have a conversation, definitely face to face, and then look at OKRs, objectives and key results, which is going to help you start setting that direction and help you figure out where you need to focus. Objective is, what are we trying to achieve? So say at the end of the year, we want this platform to have X amount of users in these places. Your key results is going to be these incremental points that you put along the way that's going to help you measure if you're reaching it. Say if your end result is you want to reach 1,000 users, you might have in 3 months, well, then I should have 200 at the end of 3 months, and then so on and so forth. And then the work that you do is what's in the middle. What is the work that you need to do across your value stream? And start from left to right. There's a sequence. There's a dependency. We need to build this block first, when we can build that block. So that already gives you a sequence, a rank in which you can go by. So use your value stream. Look at your O, look at your KRs, identify the work that you need to do, and make sure you've got your sequencing in place.
Gosh, Sannette, I love the way you talk about this stuff because you think so logically and in order that it makes it really easy for all of us to follow along. So I really appreciate the way that you articulate this stuff. And when I think about key results, for example, obviously a lot of us have so many different KPIs in all of our businesses and lives that we're all aspiring towards and that we've set goals towards. I always really appreciate talking to people in the fitness industry, for example, because I just think the fitness industry, I mean, here I am wearing an Apple Watch, for example. There's so many metrics that come along with the world of health and fitness and wellness that we can measure, but some of those metrics can be deceiving. For example, when I talk to fitness people, they always say, no, I don't weigh myself, because if I go to the gym, sure, I might be losing weight, but I'm also gaining muscle. So weight can be one of those misleading things. And in the world of business, I feel like there's so many of those things. People get really hung up on, I want to hit, let's say, $100,000 in revenue. For a lot of people, that's their first target. And they think that they have to measure it there. Whereas where my head goes, having been in the game for 16 years, is I'm like, how many leads are you generating? How many sales conversations are you having? Those are metrics that I can control and that I'm interested in. Sannette, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because you also tie it in not only with the goal setting, but you call them those key results from the OKR framework. What are some of those metrics that you pay attention to? What are some of the downfalls of metrics that people might think are important, and then shed some light on the real stuff for us?
Absolutely. Oof, this is a long conversation, can be a long conversation. I've been involved in very long efforts to try and identify that, because absolutely we love to measure things. And actually the first downfall that I will say when it comes to metrics is, I don't think people are always very intentional with the experiments that they build around it. What are you learning? What is behavior that you're trying to change by measuring a specific thing? So that's one thing to remember. And let me stay back a little bit and go to absolutely the measurement around the ROI for the business is very important, but I would actually start with, how am I measuring I'm solving that problem that I've identified for the customer? One of my favorite examples, and I mention this, and I'll come back to my point, I'll mention this because if you're solving the customer problem, then the ROI is going to follow. So I would start and focus there and be very clear how you're going to put that experiment together so that when you're incrementally start delivering using that Agile framework, how are you measuring, what are you measuring, and how are you feeding it back? And there has to be action after you've done the feedback, or you got the feedback. So my favorite example of this, there's this company called that does couch surfing. And if you don't know about them, they've been around for quite some time now. And they allow or enable people that like to travel. And I've traveled a lot, and it's a very different experience when you hang out with the locals versus when you're staying in a hotel. So this is a website that enables travelers to find people that want to meet travelers, and you hang out on their couch. Basically, they offer you a couch to sleep. They have identified that a success or a satisfaction or a happiness KPI, a customer indicator of that they're solving a problem, would be that they're spending the least amount of time on their website, which I thought is brilliant because, of course. So their KPI, which they then measure in their OKR, is actually the amount of time that you've spent searching for the couch minus the amount of time that you're spent booking on it. So if that number goes up, then the customer gets happier. So start with the customer first. When it comes to Agile delivery, there's this book that I love, and it's The Key Success to Influencing. And it's written by the gentleman or the group of people that did Crucial Conversations. And they talk about making sure that you're measuring the correct thing so that it actually changes the behavior that you want. So when it comes to Agile delivery, we look at cycle time, which I think is a great indicator. In other words, how long does it take you to get a piece of work through the system? We look at throughput, I think is a great indicator. When it comes to individuals' performance, especially since we've earlier mentioned that we believe a team is the true unit of progress, what I see a lot of companies do is they measure the individual's performance, which is counter, because now the behavior that you're enticing by that is they want to take something and go do it by themselves. Where in Agile, we said we believe that as a team, they can swarm on something. And then we can start applying that start finishing and stop starting principle, which is then going to increase your cycle time and reduce your lead time. So what I would say is, again, about metrics is start with the customer. How are you measuring if you're solving that problem for them? How are you measuring their happiness or the reduction in their pain? Then identify what your ROI numbers are and make sure that your metrics are tied to the values and the culture that you want to create within your organization.
Yeah, Sannette, I so appreciate those insights. Listeners, this is something that, as someone who gets to talk to amazing entrepreneurs all day, every day for a living, it's a common theme is that incredible entrepreneurs, incredible business leaders think about their customer first. Sannette, here I asked you a loaded question and you acknowledged it, that we could talk about that for literally days on end, but where you took it was, hey, let's not make it about us, because we have a tendency in business to focus in on our own problems, but you instead turned it to, how can we be of service to others? So I think that that's such a powerful insight into the way that you think and the way that you address real life business issues. And when you talk about starting and stopping, I know that this is something that plagues beginner entrepreneurs all the way through to 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, is that we're always idea factories. We always have ideas. We always are moving forward. We love building things. You called out, for example, the developer who wants to have the world's prettiest login page, and perfection is the enemy of done, for example. So I've always loved that concept. Let's talk about go-to-market, because I know it's a big component of the work that you do. And obviously we've all heard about minimum viable products, and we've heard all of these things about, good is better than perfect. All of these concepts that we've all been introduced to. But Sannette, talk to us about go-to-market, because as someone who not only is developing VR apps, which I think it's so cool, you're at the cutting edge of technology, but for everyone in business, what is the point at which we can say, you know what, let's get this into the world. Let's start getting that real life customer feedback. What's your thought process behind a launch of it's time to put this out there?
Bubblegum and sticky tape. How I think about it. And you know what the interesting thing is about my journey? Even though I have been teaching this for so many years in organizations and helped so many product teams get to that point, apply it yourself is really hard. I want to make it perfect. I want to have all the integrations. I remind myself bubblegum and sticky tape. I had this amazing experience when I worked at a company in Chicago, my first company in the US that I worked with. And I had a month to get their project that was running behind for iOS to get it to the Apple Store. And we had to really double down on that thin slice of what are we solving for the customer? What do they need to solve the customer problem? What can we automate? And automate is usually actually something you do later. Behind the scenes where nobody can see, there was a lot of running around, there was a lot of manual work, and that is fine. I would encourage entrepreneurs to get to the point where you can get feedback. And then once you get enough feedback in your increment and you put it out and find a trusted group of friends, find a trusted group of partners, great partnerships, especially in the startup space. There's so many companies that's just starting up. That's how I'm building my ecosystem as well. And we're so willing to help one another. Yes, I'll definitely test this for you and give you a great testimony once it's ready. I would start there, get a trusted group, and then keep incrementing and putting it out there until you feel comfortable, or even they tell you, yes, we think this is now good for going out there. But don't MVP actually means you've gone through an alpha, you've gone through a beta, you've gone for quite a few iterations before you get to a point where this is now market ready. So it's be brave, put it out there, get feedback as soon as possible, bubblegum and sticky tape what you can so it's the least amount of money that you're spending for the most amount of feedback. And then when this time is ready, you'll know.
Yes, I love that answer. I'm glad you took us there because the MVP, you're right. So frequently that's what business books and college lectures focus on, but that actually might be a little too late because we do have so many opportunities to solicit that feedback really early on. This was not something that I figured we'd talk about here today, but I do think it's important for all of our listeners is that when we talk about soliciting feedback, I see it all the time, especially with newer businesses and entrepreneurs, is that all the feedback, they get it from their closest friends, and their friends want to be encouraging. So they're like, no, this is great. Sannette, what are some of your tips for soliciting real feedback, valuable feedback? Is it in the way that we ask? Is it the questions that we ask? How can we solicit valuable feedback?
Valuable feedback, well, let's identify what that means to you. So valid, in other words, it actually comes from somebody that will use your product first and foremost. That goes back to really knowing who your customer is. So do your market research, identify profiles, and actually find a company that will be that customer of yours. And then valuable, in other words, design the experiment, I'm going to call it. What are you testing? So for example, when I started doing my first prototype, I actually wrote a script and I asked them specific questions. Like, how would you solve this? How can you do this functionality? How would you do this within your team? So that the data that comes back, the information is structured and you can actually use that against your experiment and identify, okay, this didn't work. If you just put something in front of anybody, they're going to go click around wherever they want. And if that's what you want to test for your interface, that's fine. But make sure you can track what they're doing. Make sure you know what you're trying to get out of it. And make sure you put it in front of somebody that is a valid customer. Now, to get that valid customer, personally, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. And I have a business coach that talked to me about professionals talking, putting that out there. Connect with people, offer value, be of service, get interested in what they're doing, and then create a relationship. And then through there, I would reach out and ask them if they could do you this massive favor and partake. And maybe there's something you can do for them. Maybe there's an audience that you can amplify them to. So it's all about relationships building, as I'm finding I'm going through this journey that is going to make that difference for you.
Yes, amen to that. I love that advice, Sannette. And listeners already know this, but towards the end of these conversations, I always love transitioning from talking to you as the subject matter expert to talking to you as one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur, Sannette, and you bring to the table so much experience inside of, we've named the brands before, Visa, the PayPals of the world. I think it's so cool, your professional career. But outside of that, you have done speaking, you have hosted workshops all over the world in front of so many different tech and business leaders. So with all of that in mind, Sannette, I think it is incredible, and congratulations on launching your own business. I'd love for you to share some insights. Looking back at your career, obviously, I'm a big believer in everything we do sets us up for what we're currently doing and what we're going to be doing. So with that in mind, what are some of your professional background experiences that now that you're an entrepreneur, you've realized, holy cow, I didn't even realize that was uniquely setting me up to run my own business? Talk to us on that entrepreneurial front.
Oh, such a great question. And, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people. You don't have a lot of time to actually sit and reflect and think about this. As I go through my journey and I think back about my time working in South Africa and then working in the UK and then working in the US, resilience comes to mind. Because I've had such an adventurous spirit and my curiosity, I just always want to learn about everything, whether it's different cultures and whether it is the whole software development pipeline. That really did me well, because now I am so comfortable being able to talk about the business side of it. I'm learning about the sales and the marketing side. The whole development piece is extremely familiar to me, but not just on the product side, how you define it, but actually in the technology side and how you put your CI/CD pipelines, for example, together. So I spent quite some time going very, very deep and understanding how my whole ecosystem look, how all the parties come together, what everybody needs, and how the information flows. I'm so intrigued about ecosystems. So systems thinking and sitting back and really paying attention to how everything connects. And that's what I've done throughout my time actually at all these companies. I would spend like 2-3 years, try and learn as much as I can, put my nose in everybody's business, ask a lot of questions, and learn as much as I can about the whole pipeline and then move on to the next. And I think that served me very, very well.
Yeah, I love that attitude. And I think that not only resilience is on display there in the way that you view learning and education, but I think what's really important there is evolution. I think it's something that it's part of our entrepreneurial DNA. Is who we are today is not who we're going to be a year from now. And Sannette, even in all of your professional background, you said it, getting up in other people's business, all of it was part of your evolution into the entrepreneur, the leader, the change maker that you are today. So huge kudos to you. I also love, Sannette, I'm going to call you out here because you and I exchanged many emails before our session here today. And I love that at the core part of your business is you are continuing to run workshops for others. You've really shown it on display here today that you think so logically, you articulate it in a way that all of us can understand. Even if we've never been exposed to the Agile framework, for example, you articulate it so cleanly that we can implement it in our own businesses. Talk to us about the workshops that you're hosting, because I'm so excited that that's part of the change you're bringing to the world.
Thank you. The workshops, our flagship workshop is actually called Concept to Cash. And it is a 4-day boot camp where we take product managers all the way from concept, so learning about your customer, creating personas, doing customer journey maps, doing that value stream that I've talked about, creating your backlog, all the way to launch practices we touched on a little bit. What I found is when I worked at all these big companies, there's a lot of emphasis that's put on how do we develop, so from a technology perspective. And Agile itself focuses a lot on the delivery piece, but it doesn't really focus that much on how do you define your customer, how do you define the solution. That's where there's a a discipline called design thinking that comes in there, but it isn't truly a framework like Agile that's widely adopted. So I've developed this framework where we tie it all together, and you can hear how logically I think. So throughout this boot camp and this framework, we tie the one activity into the next, and the artifact that you've created in the one flows into the next one, and it sets up so that you have a continuous stream of consciousness all the way from your customer to the end when you're delivering. And the power of that is not only will your team be set up with a playbook, so you have a standard way of working that you can adopt and change and improve as you learn, but anybody throughout your journey, so your technical partners who are really in the business or your stakeholders, you can now tell the story. You can take them along that value stream or along that journey, and they can understand where you started and how you derived where you got to. And with the advance of AI, I was not that sure about ChatGPT when it came out, but I am loving all of these tools. I'm using tools in every part of my business, AI tools, and I've done a lot of research, and we've actually identified which are the best ones depending on where you are in your product development cycle. And in this bootcamp, we will introduce which ones can you use at which point to supercharge that productivity and have a lot more fun along the way.
Gosh, Sannette, I love the way you've laid out that entire boot camp for all of us. I think that not only is it an inspiration, the value that you're delivering to the people who work with you, but I think it's just inspiring and a real life example as to how you think about it and how we can all think about our own offers and the value that we bring to our customers and clients. So listeners, we're going to drop Sannette's links in just a minute here. But before we do, Sannette, I always love asking at the end of these sessions, I don't know which direction you're going to take this question in, but what's the takeaway? Knowing that our audience is entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs from all over the world, a special shout out to all of our South Africa listeners here in today's episode. But knowing that we've got entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different levels in all different industries, what's that takeaway that you hope everyone, having heard all of this great information and perspectives and strategies from you today, what's that one thing you hope they walk away from today's session with?
I'm actually going to go slightly in a different direction, but it's passion. I want them to take away the passion. The reason why you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur is just because you have a passion for something. Mine was bringing back that joy to collaboration and connection with people and help them deliver awesome products. Find yours, go for it. And then there's this one story that I like to tell, this frame or this saying that I really like. And it's actually comes from President Obama. He said as he was going through some campaigns in his very early years, there was this lady at the back of the room that would show up and she would just shout, "Fired up." And then people would say, "Ready to go." And for some reason, this kept getting stuck in my head. So all I can say to everybody out there, remember your passion and fired up, ready to go.
Yes. Oof, Sannette, you give me chills with that answer. I agree with you. I think that's so core part of our DNA as entrepreneurs. And I love that. It's funny. Every time I ask that question, Sannette, people take it in whatever direction they want. And it almost always comes back to the inner game of entrepreneurship in life, because I think that we could talk strategy, we could talk tactics all day long, but this is the important stuff that's going to keep us going through not only the good times, but especially the hard times. So I love that perspective. I also know that listeners are going to be super keen to jump deeper into the world of all the amazing work that you're up to with your own business. I know that you put out so much good stuff on LinkedIn. You already mentioned that, and it's something we're going to link to, but take it away for listeners. If they want to go deeper, drop those links on us. Where should they go from here?
So we will be sending out, you can go to my website and we will have a registration link where you can watch a free masterclass I've actually done as an overview of that concept to cash framework. And from there you can sign up for our bootcamp.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are making it as easy as possible for you to find Sannette's business website. Check the show notes down below. That is at, I'm going to spell it for you on the air in case you're on the go. That is at acolar.net. It's ACOLAR.net. You'll find that link down below though. So wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, scroll right on down. We're also linking to Sannette's personal LinkedIn. She is always putting out great content there. You can feel her energy even through her content present on LinkedIn. So definitely connect with her there. You heard how much today in our conversation we focus on connections, relationships. We talk about entrepreneurs doing each other favors and just having great people in your network. So definitely check those show notes down below. And Sannette, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian.